Let's try to understand TraumaBrain. The behaviors and issues you're seeing with your trauma-affected child are not all in your head. In fact, they're imprinted on the child's brain quite clearly. Let's take a look at what happens to the brain when it suffers trauma. Much has been studied in the past few years on the topic of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. These can include physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, and also household dysfunction such as substance abuse, mental illness, incarcerated relatives, divorce, or violence towards the mother. More than 2/3 of Americans have suffered from at least one of these traumas before the age of 18, and they have profound lasting effects on brain development. In fact, the presence of ACEs can lead to mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, or suicide, can lead to risky behaviors such as alcohol and drug abuse or unsafe sexual practices, or can lead to health issues such as cancer, obesity, diabetes, or produce a higher risk for STDs. Only a lucky few people have had zero traumatic experiences in their childhood, and they live at a significant advantage over all the rest of us. But exposure to ACEs in the first 3 years of life can be even more impactful. So how does early life trauma affect the brain? The amygdala is the part of the brain responsible for survival. It's responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze reaction to stress, and a child who's lived with trauma starts to live in survival mode all the time. Fear and panic create conditions for the brain to override the cerebellum, the part of the brain responsible for higher level functioning. Also called the limbic brain, this is the area of the brain that tells you when to run when a bear is chasing you. That means that when a brain is in survival mode, guess what it can't access? That's right, logic and reasoning. So if you've ever tried to reason with a kid who's experienced early life trauma during one of their many rages, you know it's just not possible. This image shows the brain of a healthy child that's been raised in a normal, loving home. This image shows the brain of a child that spent their first few months in a Romanian orphanage, often neglected by overworked caregivers. Notice the difference? At birth, a child's brain is fully developed in the brainstem area and the primitive structures, but the other areas are continuously wired throughout early childhood. You may have heard that the frontal lobe is not fully formed until age 25, so teenage behavior starts to make more sense. These are the temporal lobes, which help a person regulate emotions. As you can see, the child who has suffered early life trauma has significant inactivity in this area, which means they have different cognitive patterns. Without activity in the temporal lobes, a child can become dysregulated, angry, or violent. It doesn't matter if that traumatized child is placed into a loving home after the fact, their brain hasn't developed properly, and serious intervention is needed for these children to thrive. The good news is that the brain is an incredible organ and has the power to heal from ACEs and trauma, but only with professional intervention. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to stretch and function as a muscle, to adapt, learn, and recover from injury. Most of us have different thought patterns than we did 20 years ago, and that's because of the brain's ability to rewire the neural pathways. Some ways we can achieve this rewiring is through repetition, either via talk therapy, neurofeedback, EFT tapping, or other therapeutic treatments. Depending on the severity of ACEs, journaling, positive self-talk, and affirmations may help improve thought patterns in teenagers or adults.